Headed into this newscast with the latest coming in from the United States as US President Donald Trump has announced that he's very close to completing a plan to reopen the US economy, which has been largely shut due to the coronavirus outbreak. Highlighting the plateauing death toll curve, Donald Trump claimed that his social distancing policy had worked. Governors from 6 northeastern U.S. states have also taken initiative towards reopening their economies. Reports suggested that these governors are holding discussions on resuming economic activities without seeking inputs from Trump administration. 9 states from both the east and west coast of the United States have also begun planning for slow reopening of their economies and gradual lifting of isolation and quarantine. However, President Donald Trump has made it clear that the decision to reopen the economy was for him to take and nobody else.
The President of the United States has the authority to do what the President has the authority to do, which is very powerful. The President of the United States calls the shots. If we weren't here for the states, you would have had a problem in this country like you've never seen before. We were here to back them up. And we've more than backed them up. We did a job that nobody ever thought was possible.
The states of New York, Connecticut and New Jersey will be joining states of Delaware, Pennsylvania and Rhode Island to adopt coordinated methods in reopening the economy. Governors of the states also questioned Trump's authority over the decision to lift restrictions, as the responsibility was earlier with the states and not the federal government.
It is an interesting construct that it wasn't the federal responsibility to close the economy, but it is the federal government's responsibility to open the economy. If it's your authority to open, why wasn't it your authority to close, right? That's an obvious question.
Just before his daily briefing on today, President Trump lashed out at the press and accused them for publishing fake news. He also indulged in self-praise and aired a video showing his administration's quote-unquote successful response to the outbreak. A day after it was reported that President Trump overlooked the recommendations given by White House COVID-19 task force, Dr. Fauci himself was seen defending the president. Fauci said that the president had approved social distancing measures the first time it was recommended to him. Trump, who had earlier retweeted a post saying #FireFauci, stood by Dr. Fauci and clarified that he was not going to be removed from the team. In the last 24 hours, the United States recorded 1,509 coronavirus-related deaths and 26,641 new cases of the deadly infection. The outbreak has claimed close to 23,000 lives and has infected more than 500,000 people in the U.S. alone. On that note, let's quickly go across to our correspondent Jagriti Dave, who's joining me live from Washington, D.C. at this hour. She'll be giving us a report from Ground Zero. Jagriti, a very warm welcome to you. Let me begin by asking you, many have been labeling today's press briefing as Donald Trump's tantrum while he attacked the media with his tirade. Take us through what exactly happened at the press briefing today.
It was quite an extraordinary briefing today and was acrimonious at several points. The president opened the briefing not with an update on the status of equipment, etc., but he opened with the criticisms that had been levelled against him for not taking action soon enough. And he took to his defence. The beginning, I'd say more than half an hour of the briefing was taken up with the president defending his response to the virus. He proceeded to show what many commentators have described as a campaign-style video of a defence of his response, showing clips of commentators and politicians praising him and his response to the COVID-19 outbreak in the United States. He then very early on called on Dr. Fauci to take the stage, and Dr. Fauci essentially had to try to clarify comments that he had made in a CNN interview where he had said that earlier mitigation could have saved more lives.
And I'm going to touch upon Dr. Fauci's topic as well, Jagriti. But now that New York has recorded a plateau in the number of cases, how soon can we expect New York and other U.S. states to reopen economies?
Well, this is the other big issue that was addressed in this briefing, and this is something that governors have been looking at as well. There's governors on the East Coast states and West Coast states are forming committees to form a coordinated approach as to how they can reopen their respective economies. But of course, the president in today's briefing said that that decision ultimately rested with him, saying that he had total authority over states to when to reopen the economy. When he was pressed as to if a state issues a stay-at-home order, can you try to get them to rescind it? And the president said he had total authority. He later did say that he had the power, the federal government had the power to do it, but it was up to him whether to use that power or not. And he ultimately wanted states to make that decision. So he was hedging, but really very strongly was suggesting that it was his decision when to reopen it, that he could force states to do so, which is interesting given that when there was talk of shutting down states, shutting down the economy, the president neglected to issue a nationwide stay-at-home order, saying that he wanted to leave that to individual governors.
Right. Now, Jagdi, even though there are signs of stabilization, the coronavirus is expected to reach its peak this week, going by the CDC Director Robert Redfield, as he's quoted. Does that imply that the worst is still not over for the United States?
Well, the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, did say that for the New York state, the worst is over, it's flattening. But he reiterated that the number of deaths and the level of trauma was still quite horrific in his state. And he did warn that New Yorkers could not be reckless because otherwise they would see cases rising once again. Different states are seeing their peaks at different points. So it's unclear here in Washington, D.C., for example. It could be anything between 2 to 6 weeks based on different models where Washington, D.C. could see its peak. So other states are also experiencing an upward turn. Other states are flattening. So it's whilst we're seeing a flattening in New York, other states and their trajectories are very different.
Right. Jagriti, now as we spoke about Dr. Fauci earlier, how would you view Dr. Fauci's response after Donald Trump's tweets speculated the possible firing of Dr. Fauci? Also, how do you view this public standoff at a time when health officials are needed to be behind the steering wheel more than politicians?
Well, the White House had issued its own statement before this briefing saying that the president had no intention of firing Dr. Fauci. When he was asked about this, President Trump also said that he's not going to fire Dr. Fauci, that he likes Dr. Fauci, that he just retweeted a tweet. When asked, did you not notice the hashtag Fire Fauci, he said, I notice everything. Clearly... there are differences between the president and Dr. Fauci, but Dr. Fauci is going and trying to clearly take a step forward that will allow him to clarify his views, clarify his position, not antagonize the president. And clearly it's an advantage to the president to have Dr. Fauci as part of his team. Many commentators view Dr. Fauci as an incredibly trustworthy source, whilst there are people who are hugely critical of him, as evidenced by that particular tweet and the hashtag Fire Fauci that was trending. So he is seen by different sides of the political divide in very different ways, but he is seen as a very trustworthy figure on the public health advice that he is giving. So he's clearly a very important member of the task force, and it's a tricky divide, a tricky balance that Dr. Fauci and any health expert has to play at this stage.
Absolutely. And the divide, as you just mentioned, is, of course, indeed very vexing for the United States at this time of crisis. On that note, thank you so much, Jagriti, for bringing us all those latest details.